Clara's hand flew to Mr. Blackwood's mouth the very second the bedroom door began to creak open. "Don't talk, sir," she whispered, breath tight, eyes wide. On the other side of the door, a woman's voice, laced with honey and poison, drifted through the crack. It was Isabella, Mr. Blackwood's wife, talking not on a telephone, but to a man in the room with her. "He's old, tired," Isabella purred. "He has no heir. The deed to the south pasture is in the safe. Once the cattle are rustled tomorrow night, he'll be ruined. Everything will be ours. We finish it quietly then." Clara's heart slammed against her ribs so hard she could hear it. Mr. Blackwood's weathered fingers clutched her wrist, the rancher's strength turning to trembling shock. The two stood frozen in the soft glow of the hallway's oil lamp. One, a millionaire rancher in a simple nightshirt, his reading spectacles hanging on a cord. The other, a young woman in a plain calico dress, holding a mending basket that suddenly felt as heavy as stone. The doorknob turned. Isabella took a step. Clara didn't breathe. Then, just as the door began to open, Isabella stopped. She laughed, a low and cruel sound, and the door eased shut again. "Don't you worry, Silas," she said to the man inside, her voice fading as she moved deeper into the room. "I'll make it look like despair. After all, he's stressed. This ranch runs him day and night." The hushed conversation died. Silence swelled like a drumbeat in the vast, quiet house. Mr. Blackwood looked at Clara, shock washing across his face like a cold prairie rain. Clara swallowed. "Sir," she whispered, her hand shaking but her voice steady. "Please listen to me first." And that was how the worst night began. Hours before that moment, morning had risen soft and golden over the vast plains. Cottonwood trees shifted in the light breeze. The white ranch house, a fortress of timber and stone, woke up like a quiet giant, corral gate sliding, the windmill turning with a rhythmic tick, the kitchen humming with the smell of strong coffee and fresh biscuits. Clara had been awake since dawn. She always was. She moved like a gentle wind. Sweep, dust, mend. Check the wildflowers in the vase on the mantelpiece, wipe the polished wood rail of the grand staircase. She made sure the great room was immaculate, the pine floors shining like still water, the heavy drapes falling neat and smooth. She'd count the good china before a dinner. She'd check the wicks in the oil lamps. She noticed a scuff on the hallway wall and covered it with a framed painting of a cattle drive, so the master wouldn't see a flaw where there should be only peace. Clara did these things because she knew what it felt like when a home had no peace. Her parents had died years ago on the trail west, taken by fever like two candles blowing out in the same harsh wind. Since then, life had been a struggle. A job here, a meal there, sometimes a bed in a boarding house, sometimes a spot in a hayloft. She had learned to be quiet, quick, and careful. She had learned to make spaces feel safe, even when her own world was not. When she got work at Mr. Elijah Blackwood's ranch 3 months ago, she told herself, "Give this place your best. Make it run like a song." And Mr. Blackwood noticed. He was the stoic, respected owner of the biggest cattle ranch in the territory. He was firm but fair. He said, "Thank you, Clara," when she did small things well. He often wore a simple vest and kept his spectacles hanging low when he read his ledgers. Sometimes, when work ended late, he would call her into his study and pour her a cup of tea too. They would sit at the big oak desk and talk about nothing heavy, just books and the sound of the wind across the plains. "Your hands are careful," Mr. Blackwood had said once, watching her arrange his late wife's porcelain figures. "Careful hands save a ranch from ruin," Clara had smiled. "Careful eyes, too, sir." There was only one shadow in the house, Isabella, Mr. Blackwood's young wife from the east. She was beautiful and elegant, with a smile that never reached her eyes. She didn't work. She didn't have to. She rode in the finest buggy and wore dresses ordered from St. Louis. She sometimes entertained traveling dignitaries and liked to be seen as the queen of the territory. But in the quiet corners of the house, her frustration felt sharp. She would complain about the dust and the endless sky. She would say, "What's the use of all this land if we're trapped in the middle of nowhere? Then she would sigh and tell Clara to fetch her another glass of sherry. Clara didn't judge. It wasn't her place. But she watched. She noticed Isabella never asked Mr. Blackwood about the cattle drives. She noticed she rolled her eyes when he took late-night meetings with his foreman. She noticed the sad way the master's gaze sometimes rested on a small, dusty rocking horse in the attic, a toy from his first marriage that had never been used by a child of his own. That afternoon, a storm had gathered over the plains. The sky went heavy and grey. The first thunder sounded like a distant stampede. Clara finished cleaning the great room and headed toward the master's bedroom to turn down the sheets. As she reached the doorway, she heard it, Isabella's voice. Not playful, not lazy. Hard. I told you, Silas, we're done waiting, she hissed to someone inside. I can't spend the rest of my life in this dust bowl. He can't give me a child. This whole ranch, the wealth, it falls to me when he's gone. We'll say it was his heart. We'll say the doctor warned him to rest. We'll do it tonight, after the rustling. Clara froze. The mending basket slid a little in her hands. Her mind raced, but her body went still like a doe before it runs. Every lesson she had learned about careful hands and careful eyes stood up inside her. She didn't gasp. She didn't drop anything. Footsteps clicked on the floorboards behind her. A gentle scent of pipe tobacco drifted in. Mr. Blackwood, walking toward his room, a book in his hand. He was about to call out to his wife, perhaps to ask her to read to him. Clara moved faster than her fear. She stepped in front of the master, put down the basket, and pressed her hand softly over his mouth. Don't talk, she said, her voice the smallest whisper. Sir, please listen. For a heartbeat, Mr. Blackwood just stared, shocked that his hired girl would dare. But something in Clara's eyes, steady, bright, pleading, made him trust. He didn't call out. He didn't push her away. He stayed very still. Through the door, Isabella kept talking, lower now, as if she had moved deeper into the room. Yes, I have the forged deed, she said. One signature, and the south pasture is yours. It will look like a legitimate sale. He won't know what hit him. I want my freedom. I want a new life back east, a real life. This old man has given me nothing but dirt and cows. The master's face changed. First confusion, then understanding, then a pain so deep it made his broad shoulders drop. He had brought this woman into his home. He had opened his life to her. She had worn his first wife's jewels and smiled in town portraits. He had chosen her, even when the world whispered about her ambition. And now? Clara felt the master tremble and gently took his hand. Sir, she mouthed, forming the words slowly with her lips. No sound. The sheriff. Mr. Blackwood's eyes, filled with a terrible sorrow, nodded. He pulled back like a shadow, taking one quiet step. Together, they moved away from the door, down the hallway, and into the dark study. Clara shut the door without a click. The master's fingers shook as he unlatched a small cabinet. Not for a telephone, but for a piece of paper and a pen. Clara, he rasped, his voice rough with emotion. Ride. Ride to town like the devil himself is chasing you. Give this note to Sheriff Miller. Tell him my wife is trying to ruin me. I'll send Jed, the foreman, Clara whispered back. He's faster. You can't be alone here. She slipped out a side door and ran to the bunkhouse, her heart a frantic drum. The house seemed to hear everything. The air felt like glass. The grandfather clock in the great room gave a tiny shudder as it ticked. Outside, the storm cracked open. Rain began to fall in heavy sheets. Then the footsteps came back. Isabella and a man, Silas Kane, a rival rancher from the next county, left the bedroom and walked into the hallway. Their plan was in motion. They were heading toward the study now, where the safe and the real deeds were kept. Closer, closer. The handle turned. Clara rushed back inside just as they entered the study, placing herself between them and Mr. Blackwood. She could hear it, far away at first, then louder, the thunder of hooves, galloping hard through the wet prairie mud. Silas Kane smiled as he pushed the door open, his eye sweeping the room and landing on the two of them, the old rancher, pale but strong, and the hired girl standing in front of him like a small tree that refuses to bend. "What's this?" Isabella asked, her voice silky with false surprise. "A late-night meeting I wasn't invited to." Clara lifted her chin. Mr. Blackwood held an old revolver in his hand, its barrel steady. The sound of hooves grew louder. The main gate outside groaned open. Boots hit the wet porch. Isabella's smile flickered. Clara took one breath and said with the calm of someone who had survived loss and hardship, "Sir, stand behind me." The front doors of the ranch house burst open, and the study door was thrown wide as heavy steps rushed in. The storm outside grew violent, lightning cracking across the vast, dark sky. The heavy boots of Sheriff Miller and his deputy echoed against the pine floors of the ranch house. Clara's heart raced, but she kept her stance firm in front of Mr. Blackwood, a wall no one could move. Isabella froze, her confident smirk collapsing when she saw the sheriff, his Colt revolver drawn and ready. Her eyes darted between her husband, the hired girl, and Silas Kane, trying to make sense of the scene. "Sheriff, what is the meaning of this?" she demanded, her voice trembling now. "Elijah, tell them to leave. There's been a misunderstanding." But Mr. Blackwood stood tall, his reading glasses low on his nose, his voice steady as granite. "You plan to ruin me, Isabella," he said, his words cutting like glass. "I heard it all. Every single treacherous word." Isabella laughed nervously, her voice cracking. It was a game, a joke. You know how I am, darling. Just foolish talk." Sheriff Miller, a tall man with a stern face, raised his hand. "Mr. Kane, you're both under arrest for conspiracy to commit theft and fraud," he declared. "No!" Isabella shouted, stepping back. "It's a lie. He's my husband. He knows I love him. This is all a misunderstanding." But as she struggled, the deputy moved forward, gripping her arm while the sheriff cuffed a stunned Silas Kane. Isabella turned her gaze sharply towards Clara, her eyes burning with fury. "You," she hissed, her voice low and venomous. "This is your doing, you little gutter snipe." Clara's chest tightened, but she didn't flinch. She looked her straight in the eye, calm but unafraid. "No, This is your doing." The sheriff led them out, Isabella's shrieks echoing down the hallway. "I'm innocent. I'm being set up. Elijah, please, you know me." Silence fell once the doors closed behind them. Only the storm outside kept rumbling, as if the sky itself had witnessed the betrayal. Mr. Blackwood sank slowly into his chair, his hands trembling as he set the revolver down. For a moment, he looked 10 years older, his strength stripped bare. Clara hurried to his side, kneeling down. "Sir, are you all right?" she whispered. He reached out, gripping Clara's hand tightly. His eyes were wet, but his voice was steady. "If you hadn't stopped me, if you hadn't made me listen." He shook his head, unable to finish. "You saved my life's work, Clara. You saved this ranch." Clara lowered her eyes, her throat tight. "I only did what was right, sir." Mr. Blackwood cupped her face with his calloused hand. "No, you did more than that. You gave me the truth outside." The light of lanterns bobbed as the sheriff's posse rode away. The house felt different, emptier, yet safer. In that silence, a new chapter was beginning. Tomorrow, the whole territory would know what happened inside the Blackwood Ranch. And Clara's life, once hidden in the shadow of service, was about to change forever. Morning broke with a weight heavier than the storm the night before. News had already spread like a prairie fire. Rancher King's wife arrested in shocking betrayal. Townsfolk gathered outside the small courthouse, whispering and pointing. Inside, the air was thick with tension. Clara sat beside Mr. Blackwood on the polished wooden bench. But this time, she wasn't in her plain calico dress. Mr. Blackwood had insisted she wear a fine blue dress, elegant and dignified. Her hair, usually tied back in a simple bun, was neatly styled. She looked nothing like the girl who once scrubbed floors before dawn. Mr. Blackwood, regal in his dark suit, rested a calm hand on Clara's arm. "Remember," he said softly, "you are family now. Hold your head high." The courtroom door opened. All eyes turned. Isabella shuffled in, her wrists unbound but a deputy at her side. Her once proud shoulders sagged, her expensive dress wrinkled from a night in a jail cell. She looked around desperately, as if searching for a way to rewrite what had already been written. Silas Kane was brought in after her, his face grim and defeated. "Court, rise," the bailiff called. The circuit judge entered, stern and composed, and the proceedings began. The town prosecutor wasted no time. "Your Honor," he said, his voice sharp, "we present evidence that the defendant, Mrs. Isabella Blackwood, conspired with Mr. Silas Kane to defraud her husband, Mr. Elijah Blackwood, of his land and property." The key evidence was a letter found in Silas Kane's bag, a letter from Isabella, detailing their entire plan. As it was read aloud, gasps filled the room. Some people shook their heads in disbelief. Others stared at Mr. Blackwood with pity. Isabella shot up, her voice desperate. "It was his idea. Silas manipulated me." But the judge's expression didn't soften. The prosecutor continued, "Your Honor, we ask for the full weight of the law. A woman who plots to betray her husband, a man who gave her everything, deserves no mercy." Isabella sank into her chair, her face pale. Her eyes flicked once more to Clara, blazing with a mixture of anger and regret. She met her gaze calmly, her hands folded in her lap. The gavel struck. The judge's words rang out. "Silas Kane, this court finds you guilty. You are hereby sentenced to 5 years of hard labor. Isabella Blackwood, you are hereby divorced from your husband, stripped of any claim to his name or property, and ordered to leave this territory on the noon stagecoach tomorrow. Do not return." The courtroom erupted. Isabella was led away, shouting that she was the victim. Mr. Blackwood closed his eyes, a single tear slipping down his cheek. He turned to Clara, grasped her hand, and whispered, "Thank you for saving me." But even as the stagecoach carrying a disgraced Isabella kicked up dust on the road out of town, Clara knew this was not the end. This was only the beginning of a new life, one where her place in Mr. Blackwood's world was about to be forever rewritten. The days after the trial felt like stepping into a new world for Clara. When visitors came to the ranch, they saw Clara not serving tea, but sitting beside Mr. Blackwood, going over the ledgers. He had made a decision that surprised everyone. From this day, he announced to his foreman and ranch hands, his voice steady and clear, "Clara is not just my ward. She is my daughter in all but blood." The word sent ripples through the territory. Clara, overwhelmed, bowed her head. Her chest swelled with emotion she couldn't put into words. She had gone from a penniless orphan to being recognized as family by one of the most powerful men in the West. But Mr. Blackwood didn't stop there. He saw the sharp mind behind her quiet demeanor. He began teaching her everything he knew, how to read cattle brands, manage supplies, and balance the complex finances of a massive ranch. The first few months were terrifying for Clara. She pored over the ledgers late into the night until her eyes blurred. She faced skepticism from some of the older ranch hands, who muttered that a girl had no place running a cattle empire. But she didn't let bitterness touch her heart. She worked harder, her careful hands and careful eyes proving her worth every step of the way. For years later, Clara was no longer just Mr. Blackwood's ward, she was his indispensable partner. She no longer carried mending baskets, she carried the future of the ranch on her capable shoulders. It was during this time that Clara met Thomas. He was the town's young, kind-hearted blacksmith, with honest eyes that seemed to notice her in a way no one else had. Their first conversation was about a new design for a branding iron, but soon it grew into Sunday walks, shared laughter, and stolen glances across crowded town gatherings. Within a year, Thomas proposed, and their wedding was the biggest celebration the territory had ever seen. Mr. Blackwood spared no expense, giving Clara the kind of joy she had once only dreamed of. As Clara walked towards the makeshift altar in a beautiful white dress, she saw Mr. Blackwood smiling through tears, his joy shining brighter than any star in the wide-open sky. But even as Clara began her new life as a wife, Mr. Blackwood carried one decision heavy on his heart. The choice of what to do about the past. 2 years had passed since Clara's wedding. Her life with Thomas was filled with laughter and the promise of family. She and Thomas lived at the main ranch house, and she continued to help manage the Blackwood empire. But behind Mr. Blackwood's gentle smile, there was something he had not yet resolved. The shadow of Isabella. Though the law had closed its chapter, his heart had not. One afternoon, he asked Clara to join him on the porch. The sun was soft, bathing the plains in gold. He adjusted his spectacles and spoke slowly. "My child," he began, "forgiveness is not about them deserving it. It's about freeing ourselves. I've carried the weight of Isabella's betrayal long enough." A month later, a letter arrived, bearing a postmark from a dusty, forgotten town in the far territories. It was from Isabella. She was destitute, ill, and filled with regret. She asked for nothing but wrote only to say she was sorry. Mr. Blackwood read the letter, his face unreadable. Then he walked to the fireplace. "Strength is not only in punishing," he said, echoing his words from before. "It is also in letting go." He did not burn the letter. Instead, he placed it in a small wooden box. From his safe, he took out a stack of banknotes, $1,000, a fortune at the time. He sent it to the address on the letter with a simple, unsigned note: "Start your life again. Use it well. Make this your second chance." He never spoke of her again. 2 years later, Clara held her newborn baby boy in her arms. She and Thomas named him Elijah. When Mr. Blackwood held his grandson, tears rolled down his weathered cheeks. He kissed the child's forehead and whispered, "This is the dream I thought would never come true." In that moment, surrounded by love, Clara realized her journey had come full circle. She was no longer the poor orphaned girl who quietly worked in the shadows. She was a daughter, a wife, a mother, and a woman whose courage had saved a rancher and reshaped destiny itself. And as Mr. Blackwood rocked little Elijah to sleep, peace finally settled over the ranch house that had once echoed with betrayal. If you like this story, comment, share, and subscribe to our channel for more interesting stories.